She walked through the spinning glass doors as if she owned the place. No special pass, no one guiding her. Just long, sure steps in bright white shoes and a short jacket that looked like it came straight from a trendy social media video. Everyone else needed permission to get past the front desk. She didn't. Instead, the boss himself, Mr. Black, the same man who usually just gave a tiny nod to people, met her. But today, he smiled like he'd found the future in her shiny nails and big sunglasses. I stood still by the lifts, a coffee in one hand, my laptop bag in the other. I watched this girl, no older than 24, move through security as if she owned the building's secret plans. She didn't even look up until they were very close. Then she turned, tilted her head a little, and smiled. "You must be Sophia," she said sweetly. I nodded. Then came the words I would think about 100 times later. "You're the one I'm taking over from, right?" My mouth felt dry. Not from fear, not at first, but from a quiet feeling that something was wrong, very wrong. I forced a small laugh. "I don't think we've met, and I haven't heard about any changes." She shrugged. "Oh, maybe I wasn't supposed to say anything yet." She sang it like a game. "I'm just watching Uncle Ben for now." Uncle Ben? She winked and followed him into the lift without looking back. The doors closed. Silence returned. But inside me, something had changed. A low hum started behind my ribs, like when a computer system has a small error but doesn't crash yet. It just flickers. I felt that same way. A problem about to get bigger. And the worst part was, no one else seemed to notice. Not the person at the front desk, not the new workers, not even the head of products, who walked right past them without stopping. I stood there a moment longer, my coffee getting cold. My own work pass suddenly felt heavy around my neck. Something was happening, and it had already begun. I didn't even have time to finish my morning coffee. Barely 15 minutes after getting to the office, my name flashed on my screen. Meeting request, immediate. No topic, no sender, just a time and a place. Executive Meeting Room C. That room was never used for simple chats. I felt the same strange hum from yesterday rising again in my chest. Something was off again. I grabbed my notebook, straightened my shirt, and walked down the hall. The door was partly open when I arrived, and that's when I saw them. Mr. Black, the boss, sat at the end of the table, hands together, eyes fixed on the shiny table like it would speak for him. Next to him sat Lisa from HR. Her usual friendly manner was gone, replaced by that forced, serious work look that meant only one thing. And then there was Clara, sitting where the tech head usually sat, legs crossed, her tablet glowing in her lap as if she already belonged. No one said a word as I stepped in. I took the empty chair, closed the door behind me, and tried to breathe calmly. "Sophia," Mr. Black began. His voice was sharp and practiced. "You've been with us a long time, longer than most people stay in this business." I nodded slowly, unsure if he was praising me or blaming me. But companies grow, technology changes, and leadership needs to show the future we want to build. A silence so thick you could almost touch it filled the room. Then came the line, just 12 words, no feeling, like reading from a printed card. "It's time we bring in new energy. Clara will lead that change." My mind didn't fully get it at first. I looked at him, then at Lisa, then at Clara, who gave a small, tight smile like she'd just won a prize she didn't know how to open. I blinked. "That's a major change?" I asked, my voice sounding like it belonged to someone else. Lisa leaned in. "This isn't about how well you work, Sophia. It's about matching our changing company look." That meant nothing. That was the language they used in notes when someone disappeared overnight. "We've prepared a good leaving package," Mr. Black said, sliding a folder across the table as if offering me a menu. It hit me like a jolt. I wasn't just being moved, I was being replaced. I couldn't even speak. My tongue felt like sandpaper. Then Clara, God help me, leaned forward and said, "I'm really excited to learn from everything you've built, Sophia. I mean, what a great base to take over." Take over? As if I had died. But the real shock came when I looked down at the folder. My name, my job, my firing, signed by 3 people. And the third name? Leo Green, my closest friend in the tech department, the guy I taught for 10 years. Late nights fixing things, celebrating project launches, coffee runs during big system changes. He had signed off on removing me. The ink was barely dry. I swallowed hard, closed the folder, and stood up slowly, carefully. "Am I allowed to say goodbye to my team?" I asked. Lisa offered a half smile. "Of course, but we'd prefer you keep things calm." Calm, as if 21 years of my life could be made into a few words that wouldn't upset anyone. I didn't argue, didn't cry. I just said nothing and walked out into a hallway that suddenly felt strange, like I didn't belong here anymore. But somewhere, under the shock and the spinning thoughts, something else was starting. Not anger, not yet. Something colder, something exact. I packed in silence. My office, my second home for over 2 decades, suddenly felt like a stranger's closet. Everything looked smaller, emptier. My plants, the framed picture of my cat, Whiskers, the chipped coffee mug with System Whisperer printed on the side. All of it now had an end date. People passed my open door, but no one came in. Not even for a sorry, not even for a good luck. The hallway, usually busy by mid-morning, had become quiet, like the whole building knew what was happening, and no one dared get close. It wasn't just the shock, it was the erasing and the silence that hurt worse than any meeting. I was stuffing my last notepad into a box when I saw a familiar shadow stop at my door. Leo. He hesitated, then stepped halfway in, eyes down, shoulders slumped. I waited. I didn't want to say anything first. He looked up, met my eyes for half a second, then looked away again. "Sophia, I didn't know how else to handle it." My jaw tightened. "You signed it, Leo. You had a choice." He looked like he wanted to disappear into the wall. I tried to fight back. I really did. But look, they told me it was either go along with the plan or risk changing the whole department. My name was next. I have a kid. You know that. "I know you used to have courage," I said quietly. "I'm sorry," he said. And he meant it, but it was too late. The harm was done. He turned to leave, but I called after him. "When exactly did they take away my admin rights, Leo?" He froze. "I saw the access records," I added. "My permissions were removed 4 days ago." His voice barely reached me. "They said they had to move fast. The change was coming. I thought you knew." I didn't. I thought yesterday's meeting was the start of a talk, not the end of one already decided and put into action. 4 days. That meant they had acted behind my back while I was still showing up early, fixing problems, running late-night checks to keep their delivery system from crashing. I looked down at the pass in my hand. My name still shone under the plastic. Sophia Blackwood, Systems Architect, E4. I walked to the scanner outside my door and swiped it one last time. The green light flashed. Authorized. The system still thought I belonged. I placed the pass on the desk. It landed softly, but the sound of it felt louder than anything said in that meeting room. I left it there like a signature. As I picked up the box and walked toward the lift, I passed the main floor's HR desk. Something pulled at me. I turned, stepped behind the empty computer, and typed in my still active login details. The screen showed a list of changes, password moves, job handovers. There it was. Transfer of full system access, Sophia Blackwood, to Clara Stone, effective Monday, 10:07 a.m. It was Thursday. They'd given everything to her before I even knew she existed. I stared at the screen, the blinking line mocking me for a moment. I stood there, not moving, not blinking, just breathing. Then I logged out, straightened my box, and walked away. No emails, no announcements, no one followed. But something in me broke quietly, and somewhere in that break, something else began to form. The box sat unopened in the corner of my living room. I hadn't touched it since I left. I didn't want to see the mug or the framed photo or the lanyard with my pass. Not yet. Not until I knew what came next. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table with my old laptop, my personal one, the one I didn't connect to their network. A clean start, away from their reach. The air was still. the kind of stillness you get after a storm. Not peaceful, just empty. But inside me, there was no panic, not even sadness, just thought. I opened my old emails and typed the words Intellectual Property Transfer 2022. It appeared right away, an old email chain from the legal team. I remembered it now. They'd asked me to sign a paper giving full rights of the system I built to the company. I had said no, not out of anger, but because it was the right thing to do. Back then, I had worried that their words were too broad, that it would let them sell, license, or use the system without my permission, even in areas not related to the company's work. They told me it was normal, that everyone signed it. I replied that I wasn't everyone. The chain ended with my last reply. Until changes are made to show shared ownership or a clear limit, I cannot sign this document. They never replied, and more importantly, they never followed up. I scrolled further down and opened the attached paper. The PDF was still unsigned. The blank space for my signature was untouched. They'd forgotten. Or maybe they thought I had given in eventually, that in the rush of deadlines and new products, I'd quietly added my name like everyone else. But I never did. And that's when I remembered something else, something their lawyers had mentioned during one of the early system design meetings when everything was still being discussed. I searched again. IP Clarification Meeting Notes. I found it there, in a summary from the company's own legal team, dated October 14th, 2022. Due to the nature of Sophia Blackwood's independent development prior to formal integration with company systems, an explicit signature is required to enforce IP transfer. Without it, legal ownership may be challenged. There it was, in writing, from their own team. My system, the base of the company's supply chain engine, its smart delivery planning, its vendor network, wasn't theirs. Not legally, not fully. It belonged to me because they never got the one thing they needed to make it theirs, my signature. I stared at the line again, reading it 3 times. There was no joy in realizing this, no feeling of winning, just confirmation. I wasn't being overly worried. I wasn't overreacting. They hadn't just replaced me. They had taken something that didn't legally belong to them. And now they were using it, wrongly thinking they had control, giving Clara access to a system she couldn't claim, couldn't protect, and, if pushed, couldn't explain. I clicked download and saved both papers, the unsigned contract and the legal note, to a new folder on my desktop. I named it Aftermath. Then I sat back in my chair, folded my arms, and let the silence settle around me like armor. I said nothing. I just saved the file in a folder named Aftermath. The plan hadn't fully formed yet, but I knew one thing for sure. They thought removing me from the building took away my power. They had no idea the real system had never left my hands. I've always believed systems tell the truth, even when people lie. That belief had guided me through 21 years of fixing problems, solving crises, and working late nights on updates. People panicked, people misled, but code always showed you what was really happening, if you knew where to look. That morning, I opened my laptop with fingers steady as stone. No anger, no bitterness, just thought. They had taken my pass, my job title, and my desk, but there was something they hadn't touched because they didn't know it existed. 3 years ago, during a time of messy system changes, I created a test area, a sandbox really, a copy of our main system used for practice runs, quality checks, and stress tests. I registered this test area under a fake name, user K41 Ghost, to avoid unneeded requests or slowdowns. I had set it up late one night while waiting for a fix from a vendor. It had no power to make live changes, but full view of everything that happened inside the system. And best of all, it wasn't connected to the main admin list. No one from HR, no one from the top leadership, not even Leo. No one remembered it existed except me. I logged in. The screen came to life as if I'd never left. The system hadn't removed the test area. It was still sitting unused, humming quietly under layers of untouched permissions. And then I saw it. Clara had gone live. She wasn't just using the system I built, she was inside the original system, directly changing the basic parts of the code, touching things that should have been locked, tweaking scripts she didn't fully understand. No way to track changes, no backup copies, no records of who did what. She was building a house of cards on top of a very powerful system. I clicked through the parts and found something that made my stomach drop. She had renamed many core files to match her own naming style. Worse, she'd removed several important checks from the distribution plan, probably thinking they were old junk. They weren't. Those checks prevented big system failures when different vendor timings clashed. Without them, the system was open to real-time problems in the supply chain. She didn't know what she was doing, and clearly no one was watching. They had handed her a machine with a powerful core, and she was repainting the buttons without reading the warning labels. I could have shut it down right then, one command, and I could have stopped everything. But this wasn't about getting even, not yet. This was about having power. I went to the hidden core part, an invisible piece I had put in place early on as a backup safety measure. It was designed to find unusual increases in power and trigger a lockout if it sensed unauthorized changes. But now I updated it. I rewrote the rules. If admin account S Blackwood is removed or disabled, trigger Cascade Lock Protocol. Cascade Lock didn't delete anything. It made the entire system stop working, a soft kill. Every process would stop forever. Data would stay there, but couldn't be read, couldn't be touched, couldn't be used until the lock was undone by a special scan of my body, and I was the only one who could unlock it. No passwords, no recovery email, just me. I typed it all in by hand, no automatic scripts, no records. I hid the change, put it under 6 layers of fake comments, then left the part. And before I logged out, I did one more thing. I took a picture of the system activity log, times of Clara's changes, her user ID, her file paths. I put it into a PDF. If anything went wrong, she would be the last user on record, not me. A perfectly wrapped excuse. I named the file inheritance.pdf because that's what she called it, didn't she? A foundation she was inheriting. Let her inherit the results too. As I shut the laptop, I felt no anger, just calm, just control. They thought I'd walk away quietly. They thought wrong. 10:24 a.m. That's the exact moment I disappeared from their world. It started with a soft sound. An email from the company server still came to my old work inbox, which I hadn't yet taken off my phone. The subject line was cold. No warning, no politeness, just 5 final words. Access privileges permanently removed, effective immediately. No greeting, no explanation, no signature. They didn't even pretend to be professional anymore. That was the moment. The moment they thought they'd wiped me out of their digital world, thought they'd officially removed me from the story I'd written line by line, part by part for 21 years. I stared at the email. No blinking, no breath. Then I calmly closed the laptop and folded my hands. No reaction, no reply. I just sat in the quiet of my kitchen, a second cup of black coffee growing cold beside me. Outside the window, the world kept moving. A runner passing by, a delivery truck stopped at the curb, birds picking at crumbs on the sidewalk. And inside, silence, but not defeat. Because unlike them, I never announced my moves. I remembered something my father used to say when I was young. You don't need to shout to be powerful. The ocean is silent before a big wave. So I sat in that quiet. Let it stretch. Let it get sharper. Let it settle around me like a warm blanket. They believed taking away my access was the final blow. What they didn't know, what they never even thought about, was that the base they were standing on had been made to react to that exact move. They'd pulled the trigger. They just hadn't seen the bullet yet. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. Normally I wouldn't answer, but something in me, a spark of curiosity, maybe instinct, made me swipe to answer. Sophia Blackwood? A man's voice asked. Professional, clear, with a formal accent. Yes, this is Daniel White, Executive Vice President of Systems at Nova Innovations. The name hit like a jolt behind my eyes. Nova Innovations, the same company the old company had beaten in last year's big contract bid. A company whose entire delivery part had stopped working after losing to my system. I hope I'm not calling it a bad time, he continued, but word gets around. We heard about the change at your old company. I didn't say a word. He filled the silence. We've also heard about the recent system problems, and frankly, Sophia, we'd rather not start from scratch. We're interested in what you built. More specifically, we're interested in what you could build next. Still, I said nothing. He paused, then added, I'm allowed to offer you full control of the system design, a clear budget, no rules holding you back, and a co-founder share if you're willing to lead the division. My fingers tightened slightly on the edge of the table. This wasn't just a job offer. It was an invitation to create again, on my terms, with the full power of a competitor behind me, and the quiet knowledge that the old company's biggest rival now wanted to use the very mind they'd erased. I glanced back at the laptop, the email still open, still glowing, access revoked. Perfect. I'd like to discuss this further, I said finally, but not on the phone. He chuckled. Of course, we'll fly you out first class tomorrow. Tomorrow's good. He thanked me, left his contact details, and hung up. I sat still for another minute, not smiling, not frowning, just calm. They had erased me at 10:24, but what they didn't realize was that was the moment I finally became free. The flight to the new city was quiet, too quiet. First class always was. Warm towels, soft lights, no one talking unless asked. But my mind was loud. I wasn't thinking about the leaving papers the old company had given me. I wasn't even thinking about Clara or Leo or the 10:24 email that tried to erase me. I was thinking about the plans already forming in my head. Lines of logic, a system design without old unnecessary parts, a system built clean, fast, secure. Not for the old company's glory, but for mine. They didn't just fire me, they freed me. Daniel White met me at the airport himself. Tall, late 40s, a perfectly fitted suit, and the kind of old-fashioned manners that belong to men who still shine their own shoes. He introduced me to his tech head, a quiet woman named Dr. Anya Sharma with sharp eyes and a notebook that never left her hands. They didn't waste time. By 4 p.m., I was in a glass-walled meeting room overlooking the city skyline, showing them the system I'd once built for the old company and the version I now plan to build better. No company delays, no layers of approval, just action. By 6:15 p.m., a private server space was ready in their internal test area, clean and waiting for my hand. And as the sun went down behind the mountains, I sat down alone, focused, and began again. But rebuilding something isn't just about writing new code. It's about clearing the mess left behind. I opened a web browser, purely by instinct, and searched for a phrase I hadn't seen until recently. Next Gen Core. That was the name Clara had used. Bright, branded, new generation nonsense. But something about it had bothered me. The way she rushed to put it everywhere, even though she didn't understand what the system did, it felt too soon. And it was. The search results showed her social media post, the press release, even a tech blog entry quoting her as the visionary behind Next Gen Core's new era. But then I checked the National Copyright Office's public records database. Filed March 3rd. Owner, Clara Stone. Platform, Next Gen Core. Filed under Original Software Architecture. I read it twice, then a third time. She hadn't just changed the name of my system, she had filed it under her name, as if she created it. I knew for a fact she had no idea what the inside of it even looked like 3 months ago. Worse, she used almost the exact same system descriptions, word for word, as the version I had written down in a secret paper back in 2021, something that was time-stamped, saved locally, and never signed over to the old company. This wasn't ignorance, this was theft. But I didn't yell, I didn't email her, I didn't tell Daniel. Instead, I opened a new tab and went to the Copyright Office's report portal for rule breaking. Anonymous submission, supporting documents attached, my white paper, old history logs, data files, pictures from my Ghost account before I was locked out, and finally, a legal statement explaining the timeline, the missing transfer of rights, and the copying of original system logic, without naming myself directly. I hit submit. No noise, no fireworks, just a quiet confirmation. Your message has been received. I leaned back in the chair. It wasn't revenge, it was fixing a mistake. Let the system handle it. Let her walk blindly into a trap she'd proudly marked with a permanent pen. They thought they fired a name on a pass. They forgot the brain behind the system. Now, I wasn't working for them. I was building something for myself. Stronger, sharper, untouchable, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was holding anything back. The kettle let out a soft hiss as the water reached a slow, steady boil. I moved with practiced ease. Chamomile, loose leaf, no sugar. My routine for mornings when the world felt too loud. But today wasn't loud. Not for me, for once. The mess belonged to someone else. As the tea steeped, I slid my laptop open and clicked the link quietly sent by a former coworker. No message, just the live video stream already set up and counting down. Global Solutions presents the future of logistics, powered by Next Gen Core. Of course, she named it that. Bold, shiny, unaware. The stream started exactly at 11 a.m. High-quality production, lights, music, company flash. Clara walked on stage wearing a white suit 2 sizes too big, probably thinking it made her look like a tech visionary. Her voice was overly practiced, lines memorized but not truly understood. Today, she said, beaming, we launch a new era, one designed by digital natives for a digital future. I stirred my tea slowly, watching her pace across the stage. Behind her, the screen showed animations of charts, timelines, and smart predictions. Ironically, all based on the logic she had removed the safety checks from 2 weeks ago. Not one mention of the engineers who built the system, not one word about the foundation, just a shiny surface and boldness. She didn't understand. To the audience, mostly young managers, tech influencers, and nervous-looking new workers, she was a pioneer. To me, she was a countdown with legs. By 11:15 a.m., she clicked the remote and announced, "And now, let's show real-time vendor load prediction powered by Core's special engine." I sipped. The screen behind her flickered. A brief pause, barely a second, but I noticed it. She clicked again, and that's when it happened. Red. First a flicker, then a flood. The screen meant to show smooth global teamwork glitched. Data fields scrambled. The vendor tracking bar exploded into error codes. Several people gasped as the screen shifted again and began showing a live failure report from the old company's own system. Error 504, server timeout, unauthorized script detected, core logic interrupted, recovery unavailable. Clara froze. In front of cameras, in front of reporters. The system collapsed. What they had renamed, rebranded, and carelessly changed had just fallen over its own pride, and my hidden lockout command had taken control. She stammered something about a short delay and turned to her helpers, but the camera caught the shaking in her hand. People in the front row were already pulling out their phones. On social media, the trending topics were starting. Core meltdown, launch fail, Clara Stone crash. I didn't gloat. I didn't even smile. Instead, I rose, poured myself a fresh cup, and stepped out onto my small apartment balcony. The city air was warm, dry, full of distant sounds. Behind me, the chaos was spreading across live streams and inboxes and urgent chat groups. But around me, peace. Still, I said nothing, but the silence spoke louder than fire. The irony was almost like a poem. They had removed the safety valves, taken out the code checks, ignored the need for backup copies, and now they were drowning in a system too powerful for their understanding, too weak for their pride. I hadn't broken anything. I'd simply let the system react the way it was designed to when left in the hands of children. Back inside, my phone buzzed. Daniel White, you seeing this? I texted back one word, live. And beneath that, calm. Beneath the stillness. My determination only grew stronger. This wasn't the end. It was just the start of something built right, built by me. There's a strange kind of power in knowing you're the only one with the key. Not a fake key, not a code on a sticky note, a real trigger buried deep in the hidden parts of the system no one else knew existed. A structure that for 20 decades had lived, grown, and worked well under my fingers. For weeks, I had waited, not with anger, but with calm, watching the problems unfold from afar. They didn't even know they were pulling on the wrong end of the rope. Now, the nut was about to close. I sat alone in Nova Innovation's secure development lab, surrounded by low hums and quiet, controlled temperatures. It was 2:08 p.m. My tea was cold. I didn't touch it. On the screen, a remote computer already connected to my ghost area, one of the last untouched links between my original system and what the old company believed they had full control over. They never questioned why some functions needed 2 checks. They never noticed the mirror copy. They never thought to look under the surface. That was always their weakness, assuming the genius they fired had no follow-through. I stretched my fingers, took a breath, then began typing. 1 command, then 2, then a pause. Exactly 3 seconds. This wasn't for show. This was exact. The final line was typed by hand. No scripts, no other parts needed, just 6 lines. I tapped enter. 6 seconds. That's all it took. At 2:09 p.m., the signal went out across every branch office, every distribution server, every international copy. The main logic of Next-Gen Core stopped existing. Systems didn't crash. They froze. Frozen at the very base level. Timeouts spread across continents. The smart flow they depended on dried up in an instant. At the old company's main office, I imagined Clara in a panic, phone in one hand, lawyers in the other, desperately trying to understand why their backups weren't working, why their extra systems failed, why even their cold storage servers were now just blinking error lights in the dark. Because what they didn't know was this: there was nothing to get back, not because I destroyed it, but because I'd already moved it. 2 weeks ago, during a normal system update they thought was just a maintenance fix, I had done a silent data transfer, complete with hiding keys, splitting information, and a full copy of the main logic. That copy now lived on Nova Innovation's private secure servers, separated and protected under my special body scan and 2-step internal care. I hadn't burned the house down. I had moved out and taken the plans with me. What the old company was left with was an empty shell, beautiful on the outside, rotten underneath. I leaned back in my chair and looked at the screen. Nothing dramatic, no explosion, no flickering lights, just a blinking line and an empty screen. Clean, complete, final. Behind me, Dr. Anya Sharma walked in quietly with a printout. "They're already trending," she said, placing the page in front of me. "Core collapse, old company down, for the niece." She smiled faintly. "You did it." I shook my head. They did it to themselves. I just let the system do what it was designed to do. Dr. Sharma hesitated. "So there's really no copy left there? No working copy?" "No functional copy," I said calmly. "Only the code that points to nothing." She let out a breath like she'd been holding it for hours. "Daniel wants to offer you naming rights to the platform once we relaunch." I didn't respond right away, because at that moment, something deeper settled inside me. Not victory, not revenge, but relief. I wasn't protecting the past anymore. I was freeing the future. Let the old company rebuild from scratch. Let them finally understand what it costs to remove a mind and expect the machine to still run. I stood up, pushed the chair back. "Tell Daniel I'm open to it," I said, "but this time, my name goes in ink." She nodded and left. I looked at the empty screen one more time and whispered, still standing. The call came at 3:30 p.m. I recognized the number before the first ring even finished. Mr. Black, the boss of the old company, my former boss, the man who once called me old-fashioned, who said I was too stuck in old ways to lead the next stage. He never used my first name, not in 21 years. He called me Blackwood at best, her at worst. But now the voice that came through the phone was low, careful, measured, like someone walking on glass. "Sophia," he began, stretching out the syllables like an offer of peace, "we've got a problem here." I stood in my Nova Innovation suite, looking out at the city skyline, the phone in my hand. I didn't say anything. I just listened. "There's been some kind of breakdown," he continued. "Our supply chains are locked, internal teams can't get access. We're looking into what might have caused it. Just, background changes, version problems. There's some sign your login details were involved in a few old parts." I was hoping if you had a moment, you might help us understand it. I said nothing. A silence hung between us. On his end, I could hear the strain in his breathing, the tension of a man used to being obeyed, now bending because he had no choice. It, it's not a demand, he added quickly, just a request from me to you. You know the system better than anyone. I stepped away from the window, walked over to the small round table where my tea had gone cold again. I could see the tabs still open on my laptop. Core collapse had hit the top of tech social media. The old company's stock had dropped 18% in the last 3 hours. 3 major clients, Global Trade, Oceanic Shipping, and Cargo Connect, had already put out public statements stopping contracts due to technical worries. Inside sources said their legal teams were getting ready to file lawsuits. I placed the call on speaker, letting his voice fill the room. Sophia, we can pay you, he said, desperate now. We can set up a consulting deal. You wouldn't need to come back. Just help us get things stable. We'll put your name back on the system design, even for the past, whatever you need. That line almost made me laugh. He thought I cared about my name being on something he erased? I finally spoke, my voice low and even. Robert, a pause. I could feel him stiffen. I'm not your employee, I said. I don't owe you a thing. Silence again. But you built this, he said, the slightest hint of annoyance creeping back into his tone, confusion pretending to be a right. It's yours. Don't you care that it's falling apart? I closed the laptop. I care, I said, that it's finally free of the people who didn't deserve it. He didn't respond. Maybe he didn't know how. Maybe for the first time, he realized what it meant to be on the outside, looking in. I'm hanging up now, I added. Good luck, Robert. Click. That was the last talk I would ever have with him. And strangely, I didn't feel victorious. What I felt was deeper, older, a bittersweet ache I hadn't expected. There was a part of me, some small, tired part, that had always hoped someone at the top would see what I gave, what I held together, not with titles or fame, but with hard work and constant care. But now I knew the truth. They never saw the system's true design, only the temporary structure that held their pride in place. And when the temporary structure left, the tower cracked. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled. Not because I was tired, though I was, but because for the first time I felt free, without obligation, unburdened. Later that evening, I received a short message from a former new worker of mine, Alex, now working quietly in the old company's branch office in another city. 3 emergency board meetings today. Global Trade and Oceanic Shipping have lawyers on site. Everyone's panicking. You didn't burn it down. You just let the winds hit it, and it was empty inside. I stared at his words, a flicker of emotion pulling at my chest. Not revenge, just truth. I texted back 2 words. Tell them goodbye. By 9:05 a.m. the next morning, my inbox had 6 offers. Not job offers, but offers to buy my system. 3 came from former rivals who had always waited for the old company to stumble. 2 were from new tech companies, trying to grab what they thought was a freelance architect with a grudge. 1 came from a European company I'd never even spoken to, but their subject line read, "Name your price, we'll match." But none of them mattered, because at 10 a.m., Daniel White walked into the Nova Innovations strategy room and placed a folder in front of me. A simple white cover, 1 line printed across the top in bold. Joint Expansion Proposal, Core Redefined. I looked up. He didn't say anything right away, just nodded toward the chair beside me. Dr. Sharma was already seated across the table, her notebook open, her eyes watchful as always. Daniel cleared his throat. Sophia, I won't waste your time. You've rebuilt our entire logistics backbone in 4 weeks. You stabilized what they shattered in less than a day. And you've done it all with no title, no contract, and no name on the door. He pushed the folder toward me. We'd like to fix that. I opened it slowly. Legal writing, signature lines, ownership charts, and there it was. 2% ownership stake, chief architect of global systems, permanent leadership seat on Nova Innovations Future Council. It wasn't just a job title. It was respect, ownership, independence, and in a world that had once erased me in a 12-word sentence, it felt like something I hadn't had in years. Permission to exist boldly. I leaned back in my chair and met his eyes. "What changed your mind?" I asked. Daniel offered a faint smile. "You burned the castle down without lighting a match. That kind of skill is rare. We don't want fire, we want direction." Dr. Sharma added softly, "We don't want to use your mind, we want to build with it." There was a pause, a quiet one, the kind that only comes when something ends and begins at the same time. I signed, and just like that, I stopped being the architect they let go. I became the one who set the standard. But the real surprise, the moment that turned poetic into a movie scene, that came 2 days later. It started as a line in a news brief: "Old company board replaces CEO following widespread collapse." No photo, no detail, but I knew. I knew Mr. Black had finally been removed. Not because of right or wrong, but because the system failure hit their stock price harder than their conscience. The next morning, Nova Innovation's internal chat lit up with a forwarded email. "Formal notice of merger negotiation, Old Technologies to enter contract discussions." That wasn't a surprise either. We had already taken 3 of their old clients and rebuilt their operations in less than a month. They had no power left. But what did surprise me, what made me stop in the middle of my notes, was the name listed at the bottom of the document as the signer for the old company's side: Leo Green, acting CEO, temporary, effective immediately. I stared at the screen for a long time, not angry, not victorious, just still. The man who once avoided my eyes in the hallway as I packed up a box. He was now the one who had to sign a merger agreement with the company I rebuilt from ashes. He hadn't messaged me, not yet, but I knew he would eventually, because while I never sought revenge, fate has a strange way of planning things, and the circle had come full round. Later that day, I walked through Nova Innovation's upper floor, where construction had just finished on our new operations area. The hallway lights flickered softly as I passed, casting long shadows across polished glass. A new door had been installed at the end of call. On it, in shiny metal letters, "Sophia Blackwood, Chief Architect." I opened the door. My new office, larger than the one I'd had at the old company, sunny, quiet, a window facing the mountains instead of concrete. There was no ceremony, no applause, no cameras, just the click of the lock behind me as I stepped into a space that finally felt earned. This wasn't a comeback, it was a reintroduction. And this time, I wasn't just rebuilding a system, I was designing the future with my name carved into its code. Exactly 1 year later to the day, I walked back through the same glass doors I had once exited with a cardboard box in hand and 21 years behind me. Only now, everything had changed. The sign outside no longer read "Old Technologies." It had been replaced with sleek metal letters that caught the morning sun just right: Nova Global Systems. The building hadn't been torn down, just repurposed, rewritten like code. The bones were the same, but the soul had shifted. I paused for a moment, just inside the lobby, letting the hum of quiet footsteps and lift chimes wash over me. The same place where I once stood, invisible, now felt still, but full. Not of chaos, not of noise, but of purpose. Behind the shiny reception desk, a young woman I didn't recognize stood in a crisp blue suit, head bowed as she typed into a touchscreen tablet. She looked up and smiled as I approached, and that's when I saw it. Just to the right of the desk, framed in simple metal, was a portrait. Not a painting, a photograph. Black and white, simple, direct. Me. Taken without me knowing during a Nova Innovations leadership meeting, my side profile visible as I pointed to a digital board, hair slightly windblown, mouth mid-sentence. Below the photo, etched in silver, "Sophia Blackwood, Architect of the Future." I didn't blink, didn't smile, just inhaled, slow, grounded. The receptionist noticed my gaze. "That's you, isn't it?" I gave a small nod. Her eyes widened. "It's such an honor. Everyone talks about what you built. It's kind of legendary now." Legendary. Once, I was just a line on a firing memo. Now, I was a standard. I didn't stay long at the front. I made my way to the lift, the same one I used to ride silently as managers passed me without so much as a glance. Now, a junior architect stepped in beside me, recognized me instantly, and greeted me by name. "Morning, Miss Blackwood," he said, smiling nervously. He didn't ask questions, didn't mention the past. He knew better. At the top floor, I walked through the open workspace where glass offices framed views of a city still in motion. Teams worked together in low tones, screens lit with new designs. Energy pulsed, but not with ego. This was a company built with purpose, not fake show. When I reached my office, yes, my real office, with my name on the door and my fingerprints in every system blueprint, I paused, opened the door, stepped inside, and sat. No applause, no announcement, no cameras, just the quiet hum of a legacy rewritten. The report said Clara had gone silent after the core collapse. She'd been named in a copyright violation lawsuit and removed from 2 speaking events. Her branding company stopped supporting her. Her social media profile had been taken down. There were whispers she'd taken a marketing job overseas. No one could confirm. I never checked. She was never the story. She was just the shadow in a room someone else had wired. I didn't need to see where she went. Because now, all around me, every system humming, every nameplate with a future ahead of it, I saw where I was, not where I'd landed, but where I had earned. From the corner of my desk, I lifted a smooth brass pen. It was the same one they'd given me during my 15th anniversary at the old company. I'd kept it. Even when they erased my email, took away my access, and wiped my contributions from public papers, it had a small engraving on the side, still intact. "To those who build quietly." I pressed the pen to paper and signed the final approval on Nova Innovation's latest patent filing, a system rebuilt from my original vision, stronger and smarter than ever before. Then I whispered, more to myself than anyone, "You fired a name. You forgot the mind." And with that, I returned to work, not to prove them wrong, but to keep building what they were never meant to understand.